Hello, welcome to Outlook Africa. My name is Robert Uncle Bob Oniawa. Outlook Africa is a show where we discuss issues affecting Africa and the Black diaspora. Today we have the honor and privilege of welcoming Canada's Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, Minister Ahmed Hussein. Minister Hussein was previously Canada's Minister of Immigration, but he's had an upgrade to a more broader, more powerful cabinet position as the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Welcome to the show, Minister Hussein.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Today, we would like to look at Canada's Fall Economic Statement 2020.
Yes.
And specifically how it benefits and how it's going to affect African Canadians going forward. Can you give us an overview of this, the Fall Statement 2020?
First of all, the Fall Economic Statement had two main themes. One is to continue to support Canadian workers, businesses, and families to get through COVID-19 pandemic. And the second theme is to build on our strong plan for economic recovery after COVID-19. So the two go hand in hand. We know that COVID-19 pandemic is not over yet. However, we already see light at the end of the tunnel. We're seeing the distribution of the first vaccine in Canada. So the Fall Economic Statement is about doing both of those things, continuing to help people as they get out of this pandemic. So you saw measures there to support workers, to support businesses, to support families, $1,200 more for children under the age of 6 who are receiving the Canada Child Benefit. You saw supports for businesses extended to June 2021, support for workers under the new EI employment insurance system extended to the fall of next year. You're seeing the Rapid Housing Initiative, $1 billion being invested to house the most vulnerable people in our communities by building 3,000 affordable housing spaces, housing units, and on top of that, increasing the National Housing Strategy funding for the rental construction financing initiative by an additional $12 billion to enable more working class and middle class families to access more affordable rental units in Canada's most expensive cities. So lots of work, and also the first major piece put in place to build an affordable and high quality and inclusive national childcare system. $420 million to be invested in recruiting more early childhood educators. We cannot increase dramatically the number of affordable childcare spaces if you do not also increase the number of teachers. They're the ones who will deliver the high quality childcare. And let me tell you, that investment is very smart economically, because there's many parents right now, especially women, who would love to go back to the workforce and who have children, but they don't have access to affordable childcare. They don't have access to public spaces. So what they do is they choose to stay home. Well, we will enable them to go back to work by giving them access to affordable childcare. That will help them, but it will also help all of us. It'll increase our GDP in Canada. It will increase our economic productivity. It will increase the percentage of women participating in the labor market. And coincidentally, government will also collect more revenues. So this is actually a smart policy. And you saw in the Fall Economic Statement, the first step towards that by proposing to invest $420 million to start the process of establishing a national system of early learning and childcare.
Those are very commendable steps by the government. However, as you may appreciate, the impact of COVID-19 on the African community has been fairly disproportionate to the larger community.
Yes, that's correct.
The government commendably took note of that and started the Black Entrepreneurial Program.
Yes.
To date, they've launched the two-part out of a three-part program.
Yes.
The National Ecosystem Fund and the Knowledge Fund are all operational. However, for business people, The actual Black Entrepreneurial Loan Fund is still not available. Why is that the case?
They're still working on the eligibility requirements. We're consulting with entrepreneurs in the Black Canadian community and African community who are telling us to make sure that no segment of the entrepreneurial class is left behind. For example, female Black Canadian entrepreneurs are asking us to make sure that the eligibility requirements meet the standards that they have of inclusion and representation. So we are doing everything that we can to get that money out the door. As you say, some of the deadlines are coming up. In fact, for the Knowledge Hub, the deadline is January 18. So soon, once we receive all the applications, the money will start to go out. So lots of work to be done. You have to understand this program was put together in less than 6 months, which in Canadian government history, that's a record amount of time. February is when the community asked for this, and the Prime Minister delivered in 6 months later. So we will obviously, we have a lot of work to do. Also with the private sector, because a portion of the money comes from the government, but the other portion is actually private sector money coming from banks. So it shows you also that when the government moves, private sector also moves. When the government leads, private sector follows. But we are also doing a lot of interesting things. Just last week on Thursday, I made an announcement as the minister in charge of the National Housing Strategy, the minister in charge of CMHC. We announced 200 Black families will get access to home ownership under a program and a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. So we're putting together $40 million to ensure that 200 Black Canadian families will have access to home ownership and build equity and have access to an affordable home. Because we recognize that Black Canadian and African Canadian families are less likely to get access to the capital to own a home, to start building equity. So we are taking a small step, but an important step. And so those are, and you probably never heard of that. The announcement was last week. So there's a lot of those kinds of announcements, and I think we need to do a better job to share that with the community.
Where can we get
a lot of things are happening.
That's actually a breaking news. Where can we get more information on that specific program?
Please contact the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation and Habitat for Humanity.
Habitat for Humanity and the
Habitat for Humanity Canada, because we're partnering together. They're putting 20 million, we're putting 20 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very good.
And then I'm doing a lot of work in this area too. So we will be dismantling the barriers that prevent Black, Indigenous, African, and people of color from accessing home ownership and housing. And so, for example, in the National Housing Strategy, so I mentioned to you the announcement that we did last week. Just yesterday, I had an announcement virtually in Halifax, 56 new affordable housing units. A third of them are going to Indigenous Black people, Indigenous Blacks in Nova Scotia. A third are going to Indigenous people, the Mi'kmaq, and a third are going to women and children fleeing domestic violence. So we're targeting through the Rapid Housing Initiative, that $1 billion program is just for vulnerable people. Canadians experiencing homelessness, vulnerable seniors, African Canadians and other racialized groups, and Indigenous peoples. So we're very clear on who we are targeting, because we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately affected them. And over the next few weeks, I'm not going to tell you all the details now.
Please do.
As the minister responsible for housing, I've been working on a number of things, and I will be coming up with a couple of announcements, each one concretely dismantling barriers to affordable housing and to home ownership for Black Canadians and African Canadians. So you're going to hear a lot of news. Stay tuned.
I really, really look forward to that, Minister Osei. Still piggybacking on the CMHC, the home buyers plan.
Yes.
As we all know, and you rightly mentioned, home ownership is the basis for intergenerational wealth.
Yes.
It's one of the ways that we in our community can really, pass something down to generations to come. The first-time home buyers plan, Do you have any plans? And will that hopefully that should be one of the things that you're going to surprise us with, because the terms are still fairly difficult for
I understand. I totally understand. And in fact, the credit doesn't go to me. Our wonderful Minister of Finance, who's also our Deputy Prime Minister, she mentioned in the fall economic statement that we have to do something about the first-time home buyer incentive. That's a program that's working well across the country, except it's not working as well for people in the GTA, for people in Vancouver and the Greater Vancouver area, and for people in Victoria. Those markets, the financial realities of those markets exceed the program. So in the fall economic statement, a wonderful Prime Minister and our wonderful Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, they talked about how we will expand the eligibility of this program to make sure that it touches and works for the financial realities faced by people in the Greater Toronto area, people in the Greater Vancouver area, and people in Victoria. So we will be announcing some changes to the program, and the fall economic statement mentioned that.
You are the very first, from my records anyway, a continental African immigrant to be appointed to a federal cabinet position.
Yeah, it's not just your recollection. That's actually true.
So, so again, that's very commendable. Now, for all the young ones coming up,
yes.
Here at FEVA TV, we would like to make sure that we show examples of what's possible for these
yes.
black children. What would you, given your experience so far, what would you tell them to prepare them to one day become the next cabinet level minister?
Well, I would tell them that, look, despite some challenges that we still have in Canada with respect to inclusion, Canada, I believe, is the best country in the world. It is a country of wonderful, generous people who embrace others. We're not completely there yet when it comes to including everyone in our society and our economy, but we are doing something about it. We're tackling these issues. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is the first Canadian Prime Minister to acknowledge the presence of systemic racism in Canada, and he is committed to do something about it. First, by signing on to the UN International Decade for People of African Descent. Second, by launching the first ever exclusive fund to support Black Canadian community organizations. $25 million, and we're hoping to increase that. Third, I just made the announcement last week with respect to making sure that home ownership is more available to Black Canadians. He is moving ahead on justice reforms, the criminal justice reforms, and you're going to be here a little bit more. You're going to be hearing more detail about that. Economic development. You heard the $221 million fund. That was significant. We got phone calls from other governments saying, how were you guys able to do this? Governments who have a significant African and Black population. And they said Canada is leading, $220 million. And what really impressed me as a minister is the speed in which the Prime Minister moved between the time he was asked about this and then when we delivered. 6 months. Now, to bring a $221 million program into reality in 6 months in government, that's revolutionary. That's very fast. And so, we're not there yet. There's still more work to be done, but we have done a lot. In terms of the African Canadian kids, I want to assure them that Canada is their country, that the advice that I would give them, which I've always found helpful to me, is please volunteer, give back to the community. That way it's very rewarding, but you also build your networks. You also expand your friendships and you also get to meet people. And please seek out mentors. A lot of people mentored me to get to where I am. So, I'm asking them to also seek out mentors. Finally, I'm asking them to apply for programs that are there to help them. The Canada Summer Jobs Program. We also have a wonderful program in the Liberal Party of Canada called the Summer Leadership Program. That is an amazing program. Virtually a lot of the young people who work for me and work for other ministers and members of parliament came through that program. Please, please, please tell the young African Canadians to apply to the Summer Leadership Program. It's an amazing program. It's well paid, but it is amazing in terms of the experiences because they get to work for a member of parliament or for for an office in Ottawa. So they'll learn a lot about how government works. And a lot of the folks who start off through the summer leadership program, they end up being hired permanently in ministers' offices, in MP offices, and so on. Also, please use the Canada Summer Jobs Program. We're increasing that program this year. So I would say get involved, volunteer, give back to the community, mentor, seek mentors, and when you reach your goals, mentor others. No, I got to tell you, I've heard good things about FEVA TV. I want to thank you for the work that you do to inform the community members about the important work that the government is doing to fight COVID-19 pandemic, the programs that we've put in place to help Canadians. Please inform the community members that we're proud of all the work that they're doing, especially our African Canadian frontline workers. And I know that FEVA TV is doing an exceptional service to educate members of the community about important government announcements, important government programs, and also inspiring youth to do better. So thank you, FEVA TV, for everything that you do. And I promise you, this interview is not goodbye, it's hello. We're going to have future conversations. I'll be coming to you from time to time to update you on what we're doing, and also for you to ask me questions that are important to the African Canadian community.